Yeah, like just because you've never had good sex in your entire life does not mean you should make that every single other human being's problem.
Yeah.
The problem is they're in power.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as you were saying, like the common misconception or like the way they try to like look at the sex work industry is that like people can't enjoy, they can't join that on purpose. Why would they want to do that, you know?
Yeah.
And it's
It's got to
like
be
that's like
coercive.
the
Yeah.
problem. Like that is not to say that there are instances of that taking place, but like there are people who join in like, hell yeah, I want
Yeah.
to do this. This is great. This is a great way to make money. I'm going to profit off of all these perverts that have been paying my bills for years.
Yeah.
Like, exactly. Like,
There is a demand. I am the supply.
yeah, exactly. So, as we can tell from life right now, I'm not going to talk about that immediately, but I will talk about it eventually. But there's a lot of misconceptions surrounding sex work. We've talked about this before, I believe, in a representation series when we covered the Netflix film that I am blanking on right now, Cam. There were like a decent amount of resources, I think, if I remember like 2 to 3 years ago correctly, in that episode that you can definitely check out as well. But I did find something that was 6 ways you can support sex workers in your community from the Anti-Violence Project. And a lot of them relate to just educating yourself, deconstructing and unpacking the reason that there are these stigmas and like viewpoints against the sex work industry and recognizing like what your own feelings are and like instead of just letting those feelings exist, question why they exist, so that you can do better as being a human. So 6 ways you can support sex workers in your community according to the antiviolenceproject.org is recognize diversity. The sex industry is a diverse place like any other sector of work. There's a spectrum of experiences, perspectives, and identities, as well as many different sectors of work. So keep in mind that folks who are already marginalized in other aspects of their identities are disproportionately targeted for violence within the sex industry. So it's less that the industry is inherently evil and more that like people devalue sex workers so much that they do violence to them. And that is the issue. 2, educate yourself and others. When learning about sex work, seek out resources that center sex worker voices and experiences, or come from organizations that support sex work leadership and rights. You'll know pretty quick if like within like the first few seconds of looking on the website, it at no point is just like doesn't say sex work is work. Like if it says sex work is work, you can usually associate that as being a good sign. If it is instead like demonizing of it or like we must save them from themselves, that's a good indicator that you're on the wrong link. Disrupt jokes that poke fun at sex workers and sex in general. Like, yes, people do make jokes about sex work. And essentially, like, they think it's just so funny. So if you hear a joke like this, explain that dehumanizing sex workers and making fun of them or their profession is not okay, because those kinds of jokes lead to the dehumanizing of the people who work in that industry and thus lead to more shame and violence surrounding the sex industry. Use your power. So recognize how your personal identities shape your understanding of sex work. As I said, you need to like unpack why you have these biases or if you have these biases and like what is your relationship to the sex industry. Are you a friend or classmate, a sex worker, a porn enthusiast? We encourage you to reflect on your identities and how you can creatively leverage your privileges to support sex workers in your community. Remember that consent is an integral part of the sex industry. Consent is an integral part of sex work, and sex workers have been leaders in advocating for body autonomy and the right to set boundaries in their workspaces and beyond for decades. And the last one is support sex work leadership and community action. Attend events in your community that support sex work and sex worker rights. And they list a group that you can follow, Peers Victoria, which is on Facebook. Another resource that is specifically geared towards keeping sex workers safe is Sex Workers Outreach Project USA, as a national grassroots social justice network dedicated to the fundamental human rights of sex workers and their communities, focusing on ending violence and stigma through education, community building, and advocacy. So they have a support line. It is 877-776-2004. And the support line acts as an essential resource that's operated by volunteers who are trained in rape counseling and crisis intervention as to truly make longstanding and sustainable change and to expand the capacity of the community support line. There is a link to donate. I'm going to, like, as time happens, going to continue to add to this. As I said in like all of our other episodes during the F the Patriarchy series, like if you know of resources, please share them with us, comment, link, email us at theghoulsnextdoor.com or ghoulsnextdoor@gmail.com. And yeah, like if you ever have the opportunity to stand up and say something, disrupt jokes, educate yourself, take those opportunities. And the last of what I'll say is it all kind of all ties together. We've covered a lot of things during this series that all kind of tie back to resources that overall help humans with uteruses and keep women safe and LGBTQI safe. And the goal is ultimately to make this planet that is on fire and awful slightly less awful. So if you haven't heard, I'm a little shocked, but you probably have heard about the awfulness that has taken place and it continues to just kind of be like a fun snowball of just awful. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Roe v. Wade thing. And honestly, what I want to say, I can't really say on camera because I'm a radical human in my heart, and you can't say that on TV. So ultimately, at the end of the day, there is just kind of like a deep well of sadness, anger, and other feelings that consistently sits in the pit of my chest. And the more I learn, the deeper that pit grows, and the more I kind of just feel gross. But there are a lot of positives to learning in that you see reality differently, you recognize things more, and in many ways, sometimes feel better equipped to deal with hard situations when they come. So as much as logically I was prepared for Friday, like we knew it was going to happen, and I prepared mentally for it. We changed our entire episode structure to meet it, greet it, and light it on fire. Everything I've learned and unlearned over my adult life was preparing for moments like that. And yet every time my heart isn't prepared. So as we do here on the Ghouls, whether it's easier done through gritted teeth, bald fists, or tears, our desire is to take that feeling that lives in the pit of our chest and redirect that energy towards actionable next steps. Ideally, if enough of us do this, we can create, like, if you watch Dragon Ball Z, a spirit bomb like Goku, and we all just send all those little actions into a giant ball that destroys the oppressive systems that are in place. That's my dream. But we watched this film, and a lot of what this film did was, as Gabe said, like subvert a lot of these tropes, but it also didn't demonize the sex workers in the film, and it made it very obvious, like, people have sex and they can enjoy it, and that shouldn't be a reason to murder people. So what we learned, or the film itself kind of like leaned into highlighting that theme, because that's something that we see in the country today, is that our government thinks people who have sex deserve to die. That sex-having humans are less than, and because they have sex, they deserve to be murdered. So whether that's done quickly through actual like murder, police brutality, and other things, or that's done slowly through oppressive and horrible laws, that is the ultimate goal that the government wants to have happen. This film kind of showcases that in a really unique way, and is very on the nose, but as we said, like without overtly saying it. What we see in the film is this like perpetuation of patriarchal hatred enacted by this elderly white woman and her husband, done in the name of religious virtue, repressed sexuality, and envy, which honestly is likely the motivation of the people in charge who are doing these things. In fact, it's something that the ghouls have been talking about for a few years now, that sex, the act of having it, has been viewed as something that validates murder in American society, whether that, as I said, like done quickly or slowly. If you have sex, you're going to die. If you like sex, you deserve to die. If you have sex for reasons other than spawning more humans, you deserve to die. If you don't like sex, well, you should still have it, but only if you're married and only to make more humans. Ultimately, this film is calling that out because it's wrong. Because that's what media does. It attempts to make humans feel emotions and do something with them. It's calling out the fact that this like religious fascism that currently exists is not the right move. And it demonizes the people enacting the violence on behalf of that religious fascism instead of the people literally just existing, enjoying their lives, having sex, and not like being sorry for it. As I said, this film kind of sparks some emotions within you and attempts to make you feel things and do things. So what are some things that you can do? The Ghouls made a very elaborate list of resources on abortion access, sexual assault resources, domestic violence resources, intersectional feminism that I'm going to link in our blog. I keep adding to it like every day, so that it's going to continue to grow. But if you know of any resources, as I said before, you can email us at theghouls.nextdoor@gmail.com. Another thing that you can do currently that I've seen lots of humans doing across the country is you can protest. If you do that, though, there are some things you should know for when you go. What I keep saying, which is just not smart, is that people just like post so many photos of people who are at the protests. Don't do that, because if the government decides that they're going to come for you, you don't want your face on the internet. So some things that you can do to protest safely, there's things you can wear and things you can bring that will increase your safety while you're there. So I found this graphic on Twitter. I'll see if I can link it appropriately. But things you can wear are nondescript, solid colored, layered clothing covering or identifying tattoos. I know that's tough. It's like 90 degrees today. So you got to be smart with that as well. But something else you can wear is goggles, because in the instance of tear gas, you want something protecting your eyes. A mask is another thing so that it covers your face. Facial recognition is a thing that exists as a technology that is being used. So just keep that in mind, that you likely, both for the Panini Press, but also for your general safety, you should wear a mask. Something I see often is recommending to write your emergency contacts on your body so that you have access to them, or if you are injured in a way where you cannot communicate those humans that should know whether or not you're okay, that you have that written down somewhere on your body, preferably in a marker like a Sharpie, so that it doesn't just like wipe off with the sweat that you will feel because it is 90 degrees outside. Heat-resistant gloves. It does not give an explanation for why. My assumption is if fires or things like that break out, that you are protected from heat. And they recommend, if you have long hair, to tie your hair up so that it can't get caught on things, that if you're fleeing police brutality, that you cannot be grabbed by your hair. It kind of gives you a little bit more safety when potential violent situations could break out. Things that you could bring, obviously water, both for drinking and for tear gas. When you are sprayed with tear gas, water is a great thing to get into your eyes to get that out. Obviously snacks to make sure that you have everything you need while you're there. And especially in the instance where they shut down the subways, train stations, et cetera, if you're going to be there longer than you expect, you're going to want to have some access to sustenance. Cash, change, and IDs. A washcloth, again, for keeping yourself clean, but also if you are sprayed with tear gas, you're going to need something to be able to wipe things out of your face. Earplugs for if those sound machine things are used. That's something that did happen during the BLM protests in Philly. They used, I believe, like weaponized sound speakers that
I think they're called sound cannons.
Sound cannons, yeah. So you want to be able to protect your ears so that you are able to hear after the protest, and that you don't receive permanent damage to your body. Obviously, Band-Aids and first aid supplies, and protest signs. Things they say don't bring. A cell phone without first turning off your face/touch ID, and making sure your phone is on airplane mode and that you've disabled your data. This is due to the fact that the government has changed the laws on tracking and also is just very on it with tracking. So if you have your phone location on, you have your data on, they're able to find where you are. If they know who you are, if they know that you're an activist, they know you are a person who has been protesting and they want to find you. If your phone location is on, they can find you that way. Also, it's a way to identify if you are at a scene of a crime. So if violence does break out, you want your phone to not tell everybody that that's where you were. Jewelry, just because you don't want it to get damaged, stolen otherwise, or be lost in it. Also, it's something to identify you later as a identifier because it's something unique. Anything that you don't want to be arrested with. And they also say contact lenses. I assume that's because of tear gas. Just to protect your eyes from permanent injury. You can also find out where protests are happening near you. Gabe shared with me through email. It's map.wewon'tgoback.com, and they list like a ton of resources, such as like links to protests that are happening across the country so that you can figure out if there's either virtual or in-person events happening near you. The next thing that obviously I always like kind of hate saying this because you can, but it's mostly just a means to like pause or like slow things down. So as we kind of talked about in our capitalism episode, the train is the awful that we currently are on. It's actively moving. You can slow the train down, but you can't fix the train. Like it is going to keep going. I'll make sense of this in a second. But essentially, you can vote. That is a thing you can do. Is that the only thing you should do? No. Should that be your main focus? No. Because you have to recognize that our current government structure is designed to hurt us and is built on top of BIPOC and LGBTQIA bodies. So attempting to destroy the train from within will only perpetuate violence against BIPOC and LGBTQIA bodies. So vote, but also simultaneously deprogram and unlearn your attachment to these systems and investigate other methods of achieving the desired outcome, which is like rights for humans and that we have less crimes against humanity taking place every day. Understand that the road to said outcome may be uncomfortable and inconvenient and much more complicated than voting for people who can only slow down the train, maybe throw scraps to the people in the back, but will never dismantle it because they benefit from its existence. So you can vote so that we don't have a Republican-led Senate that will make this all happen much faster. Yes. But recognize that the system itself is the problem. The next thing is like obvious stuff, support each other, communicate safely. In the resources I listed above for the abortion access resources, I mentioned that there's apps that you can have that like aren't Facebook Messenger where you can communicate with your friends in a safe way. We use Signal. I believe there are other ones. So communicate safely. Read, learn, save money, and give money to causes under attack when you can. There are also tons of places that you can donate to in the resource thing that I mentioned. Unplug when you need to, breathe, cry, do whatever you need to be okay. They say like put the mask on first before you can help others. That's something that's very true. The outside world is like very traumatic right now. And you're like constantly taking that in. So if you need 2 seconds to like reset yourself, take that. You need that to be here tomorrow. So do what you need to do to be okay. But do something, anything to help when you can. Survive and fight if you can, protect those who cannot, and acknowledge that your biases instilled in you by the suppressive system exist and how that may influence your worldviews and points of privilege. So, both ways that you can use your privilege to protect others, but also ways that you can recognize that you may have certain biases that influence how you see the world. And just because you think something goes a certain way doesn't mean it necessarily does. So, just making sure that you're always learning, figuring this stuff out. Ultimately, recognize that there's not one specific thing that will solve the awful taking place. That, unlike a horror movie, we don't just kill the bad guy and then it's all better now. That like this is going to be a long road. But if enough of us continue to do what we can, something eventually's got to give. That's all we can really do at this point. But if you don't understand why this is a big deal and think everything's fine, nothing's awful, everything's just going to work itself out, it won't. Especially if you continue to think that way. So millions of people are going to die and have been dying. And if that doesn't bother you, either start to unpack, deprogram, and remove that from yourself, or as disrespectfully as I can say it, fuck all the way off. And that's what I have to say about that.
Yes, it's all very valid. Thank you for sharing those resources. And as you've been doing this entire series, finding those resources and, allowing people to know what they can do. And I think a big thing is for people to know that there are things that need to be done. And yeah, like you said, like, we knew it was happening. We changed our F the Patriarchy series specifically because we knew Roe v. Wade was going to be overturned, and it's still really heartbreaking. And it further reveals just how dark the world is and the potentials for evil that are there. This reconciling with how many people are going to die because of this, and not even just because of abortion, but just for medical care, period, for just this complete disrespect for femme bodies, uterus having humans, as you said, Kat. Like, they're yeah. I also had like a whole discussion about how voting is not the answer, and that I will not be putting my faith into a system that has never been designed for people like me. And it's, in fact, has been designed specifically to oppress and harm people like me. And so, yeah, like, I'm gonna vote, I'm gonna do my civic duty, but there's so much more to that than just doing that. And like, a part of that is acknowledging it and not relying on that as the only way out. Because that's not it. I promise that's not it. That's not how that's gonna work. So, yeah, but yeah, it's been a quite the series, and I hope you are enjoying it. If you have thoughts, we love to hear from you. Love support in that way, and we're going to keep on doing what we do. Do check out this film if you can. I really found it to be quite interesting and fun. Again, horror in a way that's super digestible and unique, but also like just so awesome the way that they have these characters and what we can learn from them, and a great representation of our society right now that is generationally split for expectations of what makes a human and what deserves humanity and doesn't. So definitely, remember to subscribe, like, do all those things, support us in the ways you can, send us an email, theghouls@gmail.com, check out our social media, all those things. We definitely want to hear from you, how things are going, if you're attending protests, those things, ways that we can add to our resources and keep things going, recommendations for things we could be watching or learning or reading or doing. Always here for it.
And I mean, we only have 700 followers on Twitter. We're by no means like famous, but we're going to try to use our platform as positively as possible.
At least 700 people are going to see it.
Yeah, exactly. So if you have resources that you want out there, please let us know. I'm going to keep adding to it just from stuff I find on myself, but we want to do that more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's always really sad to say this during this series, but don't get married.
Let your kids. Literally. They'll put them into the industrial complex of servitude.
After they force you to have them.
Yeah.
When you know the world is just dark and awful.